So, what really happens when a kid grows up feeling like they were never quite the first choice? It's a really powerful and, honestly, a deeply human experience. Today, we're going to break down the psychology of the unchosen child and look at how that feeling can end up shaping a person for their entire life. Let's just start with a question that might hit a little close to home for some of you. Have you ever felt like you have to earn your place? You know, that feeling that you've constantly got to prove your worth just to be loved, just to belong, just to have a seat at the table. That feeling right there, that's the absolute core of what we're talking about today. So, where in the world does a feeling this deep even come from? Well, almost always, it starts with a pretty fundamental childhood experience. That root feeling of just being consistently overlooked. And here's the thing. This message is almost never spoken out loud. Not at all. It's communicated in these subtle, quiet ways. Maybe a sibling's needs always seem to come first, or a parent is too distracted by work to even notice the drawing you made for them. Maybe praise only shows up after you've won the trophy, so the child learns, without anyone saying a word, that their presence alone, it isn't quite enough to be the priority. This constant feeling of being second best, or maybe not even on the list, it fundamentally rewires a child's entire understanding of love. It stops being this thing that's just given freely, and instead it becomes something you have to work for. All of a sudden, love is a transaction.
The psychological term for this whole thing is conditional love, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the idea that affection is a reward for good behavior. You get love if you're helpful, if you're quiet, if you get good grades, if you don't cause any trouble. You see the pattern?
And this creates this huge internal split. You see, the very foundation of a secure, healthy attachment is believing deep down, I am loved for who I am. But the overlooked child learns a totally different and frankly much harder lesson. I am loved for what I do. Their value stops being something that's just there. It becomes entirely based on their performance. So this becomes the internal mantra, right? It's this unspoken contract that the child makes with the world. It's their blueprint for survival. They start to believe that if they can just perfect this formula, be perfect, be useful, be invisible when needed, then maybe then they can finally get the love and safety they're craving.
Now, when you believe that love has to be earned, you instinctively develop a strategy to earn it. And for so many, that strategy becomes people-pleasing. It is so important to see this not as some kind of character flaw, but for what it is, a highly adapted and honestly a very smart survival tool.
And this strategy, it operates on a really clear set of unspoken rules. Okay, so rule 1, you're constantly scanning the room, always trying to anticipate what other people need or how they feel. Rule 2, the word no becomes incredibly dangerous, so you just say yes to avoid any hint of disapproval. Rule 3, your own feelings, yeah, those get buried because they might be a burden to someone else. And finally, rule 4, you work tirelessly to prove your value, to make yourself absolutely indispensable. But what's really powering this entire system? What's under the hood? What is the deep, underlying fear that drives this constant and frankly exhausting need to please other people? It's this terrifying belief right here that at your very core, you are replaceable. That your spot in someone's life is never truly secure, and that you could be swapped out at any moment.
I mean, just think about that for a second. If affection and belonging are tied directly to how useful you are, what happens on a day when you're sick or tired, or you just can't meet everyone's expectations? What happens when you stop performing?
And that is the crucial thing. This isn't just some old childhood memory. It becomes this constant humming anxiety in your adult life. It's that persistent fear that if you make one mistake, if you set one boundary, or if you just have a bad day, you risk being cast aside for someone more agreeable, more helpful, or just less complicated. Okay, so now let's connect all the dots. We can actually trace a really clear line from that initial feeling in childhood all the way to this adult behavior. Let's look at the full pattern. So here it is, the whole chain reaction laid out. It starts with feeling overlooked. That teaches you that love is conditional. Then, to meet those conditions, you adopt a people-pleasing strategy. And that entire strategy is fueled by that deep, persistent fear of being replaced. You see how it's a clear and often totally unconscious progression? And that's why this matters so much, because you can't change a pattern you don't even understand. Just recognizing that these behaviors aren't who you are, but they're what you learned to do to survive, that is the most powerful first step you can possibly take. It's the beginning of reclaiming your own unconditional self-worth. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Now that you can see the blueprint, the cause and the effect, the feeling and the fear, the real question becomes, what is one small thing you can choose to do differently? Because look, the past might have written the first draft of your story, but you are the one who gets to write the rest of it.